All right, now let me give you a glimpse of this entire learning journey, which is going to be, 6 series segment itself. So this entire landscape of microservices is divided into 6 series. And the very first thing, which is highlighted one, which is the current course, wherein we'll be, building our entire microservices landscape right from the blank slate using clean architecture, of course by using .NET Core tooling itself. And then what we are going to do is we are also going to introduce this gateway here, and you are going to get to see that gateway using this oscillate and nginx flavor as well. So once we are done with that particular context, that means that foundational part of this clean architecture, and once we have implemented this entire periphery of this microservices pattern, then what we are going to do is we are going to switch to the second course, which is securing microservices using identity server 4. So in this particular course we are going to deal with entire security context, how authentication and authorization works, of course, and then how security happens. Let's say one microservice is calling the another microservice, so what are the limitations we have, what are the data which we want to be exposed to that the other caller guy, and let's say there are a variety of scopes which we are going to introduce into. So how we are going to implement this granular level, scope level authentication. So these kinds of variety of techniques which we are going to see here. So basically you can think of a variety of machine to machine flow, and there are variety of open ID techniques via which we are going to secure our API. So these are the best practices which is happening across the industry. That is why that is the thing which we are going to leverage here in the second course. Now once we are done with that best practices over there, so what we are going to do is we are going to switch the gear and we are going to jump on the third course, which is implementing cross-cutting concerns basically. And when I say about the cross-cutting concerns, it's all about the logging structure, and the logging is very important as far as microservices are concerned. And the reason being is because in this particular stuff you are going to know that how things are structured, and from where this entire calling of microservices are happening. And let's say if there is any microservices failed, so you need to know which service being the culprit, and you need to trace back. And that is where this structured logging becomes very important, and that is where we are going to introduce to you guys Serilog first of all. Then we are going to see different logging patterns. Then we are going to introduce this elkstack, as in to centralize this entire logging paradigm into one place. And once we are done with that, we are going to see that how to enrich the logs via a variety of techniques. And having said that, we are also going to write our own correlation ID context generator, and that is how we are going to correlate between different microservices into the same context. Let's say you are initiating any of this add to cart scenario, and you are checking that particular product out, right, checking out that particular product, and in case of checkout itself, it gets it failed at certain point. So in that particular case, you are going to see this correlation context ID, and you would like to trace back where exactly the problem happened. So this is we call as a time travel debugging kind of concept, right, which we are going to stick to, and we are going to follow that. So that is really interesting, and I encourage you guys to follow along the entire journey and follow the pattern, follow the sequence. In case if you guys are directly jumping in any of these courses, between skipping any of these courses, so it may happen that you won't understand the entire gist of the problem statement. It may also happen that your APIs might not be working. So I'm just putting these things as a disclaimer, because it may happen you guys might want to try directly Angular application, right, without even knowing the setup knowledge of that how do you set up this microservices at first place, right? So it may happen that nothing will work. So obviously follow the sequence and stick to the plan, and definitely you are going to learn a lot of things here. So once you are done with this cross-cutting concerns, so it's time to switch the gears again, and now it's time to learn about the versioning of microservices, and that is very important. And I see that many a time developers tend to ignore this particular topic as this is being short and relatively from other topics, and that is not that tricky, but it is very important, in this time, like where we have multiple clients and they need to be onboarded on the same API platform, having the same business logic, but they tend to differ from each other guys on certain context, and they don't want to import other logics or maybe other business functionalities which the, let's say, client A is working on. So in that particular case, what happens is, like companies generally provides different API versioning for the same API for the same functionality with certain limited scope, right? So that's where versioning comes into picture. So we are going to see that variety of versioning first of all, like how do we enrich our APIs with different kinds of versioning. So that is all about. So once we are done with the versioning chapter, we are going to move to on the client side part of that, and this is the place we are going to create our spa application right from the blank slate. And in this case, it's going to be an Angular application, and what we are going to do here is, of course, is like so the disclaimer here is, like I'm not going to put you like I'm having an expectation that you guys are having basic knowledge of Angular and of course .NET, otherwise it will be a little bouncer. But in this case, Angular, in case what I'm expecting is like a little hands-on knowledge, because without that you won't be able to digest the concept, right? And if you are just looking for the backend techniques, so you can till 4 course, it's also fine. And basically Angular application is the presentation of the APIs which we have done so far till course 4. So in this Angular application, you will be building different design patterns. First of all, implementing, like, even the folder structuring is very important when it comes to the enterprise pattern with Angular itself, right? So you will get to see that. And then once you are done with the folder structure, then you will be implementing all cross-cutting concerns from the front-end perspective itself, like how logging is going to be, how your you will be integrating identity server with Angular, how you will be calling APIs, what are the best practices, and how it is getting all HTMLs are getting wired up. And as far as HTML and CSS are concerned, so I'm just using certain templates, so I'm not going to explain about that HTML and all other things, although logics will be explained here, right? So I mean, theming part you guys can take care, like eventually this is not mandatory to stick to this particular theme, you can choose your own as well. So once you are done with this front end part of that, like, so the next part which comes here is the deployment of microservices to Kubernetes and AKS. And that is very important because that is where end-to-end solutioning comes into the picture, right? So what happens is, like, once you are done with the development part, so the infrastructure parts gets involved. And here we'll be seeing, first of all, we obviously, as part of our first exercise, we have already containerized entire microservices, like you will get to see in the first chapter itself. And once it is containerized, it is put into the containers, which in this case is Docker container itself. Now the next step is to orchestrate that, and the best orchestrator in place is like Kubernetes itself. So we are going to first put all these containers into this Kubernetes cluster in-house, first of all in your machine itself. And once we are done with that, so the next step is to put that on the cloud. And in this case, I have chosen Azure Kubernetes service itself from Azure itself. And we are going to spin up all the microservices into this Azure Kubernetes services cluster there. And we are going to see, first of all, how we are going to write this natively using this plain old YAML technique, which we used to write since beginning in Kubernetes world. And then we'll also see how to use reusable templates, certain like helmcharts, which can be utilized to bundle all your artifacts, and you will see these things in live. Like, so all microservices, all assets will be put together under helmcharts of its own template, and those templates will be put together inside Azure Kubernetes service itself. Once that is done, right, so your cluster is live. So that cluster you can either connect with the web version of Kube API, which you will be seeing in this particular course itself, or with that cube lens itself, which is also called Kubernetes lens, which is a very nice tool. I recommend you guys to go ahead and check that out. So with that tooling experience, you will get to see plethora of Kubernetes info in-house in your machine itself, and you will be tweaking that and seeing all the cluster info and playing with all different kinds of load balancer IPs or a cluster IP, and you will be seeing the details of the pods at very minute level, that how this cluster comes into play. And this is very important when it comes to the infrastructure understanding, right? So for any developer, generally these things are meant for DevOps guy, but I encourage you guys as a developer also to have a glimpse of that, so that you can at least understand the gist of the problem, like how these dots are connected end to end, right? So that's why it's pretty important for eventually any of these developers in today's paradigm, right? So once this is done, like once you have put your all pods on the cloud, so the next thing is like to see the service mesh itself. And the service mesh is like you'll be enabling via istio itself. And once this istio in place, of course it is going to come with different set of packages, which you are obviously going to see that to see the workloads live, right? And for that you will be having this Grafana and Prometheus dashboard in place, via which you can see the pods monitoring logs. And you will also see that how you will be injecting sidecar right into your microservices, so via which all cross-cutting concerns can be injected without even writing a single piece of code. So this is very important in microservices world, right? Let's say you are building any microservices of a scale of, let's say, Netflix or Amazon, right? So, and which needs a continuous monitoring without any failure, right? So in that particular case, this service mesh kind of scenarios, service mesh kind of concepts becomes really important. And there are different practices via which people implement that. So I have chosen the concept of istio, and via which I have implemented this sidecar pattern. And I have also given a glimpse of like how do you exclude sidecar pattern if you don't want to have that in your microservices itself. And of course there will be a Kiali dashboard to give you a glimpse of all the workload, and apart from this Grafana and Prometheus. And in Kiali you can see visual experience as well, like how one service is calling the another service. So this is very important. So let's say eventually any newer developer is joining, right? Fresher is joining your team, and you like to give a glimpse of your application. So I believe this Kiali dashboard is one of the best thing which can be shown to them, because it gives you a glimpse of the overall application, like how it works, right? In real time, as in visually, right? How flow one service is calling to another service in a visual manner itself. So this is all about this course landscape and how it is going to be structured, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy this at the fuller level. So all right, so without wasting time, let's jump to the course. See you there.